I made chapter 2 of my Mascot horror game, and this time I made the monster more unique with special attacks and better AI, so stick around to the end to see the results. In the last chapter, I added this chocolate man that chased you around the map, so to follow this theme, I drew this mascot of an ice cream and then modeled him in Blender. Then I needed to make a new environment for the player. Last time I made a map, I just slapped different cubes together and called it a day, but this led to some of the walls clipping together and it looked pretty ugly. Bruh. Therefore, I decided to actually use Pro Builder this time, and wow, that helped. After just a couple of minutes, I had finished the map and could import the enemy. For this project, I would need some custom animations for the monster attacks. So instead of just using Mixamo like I always do, I decided to animate myself, and it was so easy, and after only 4 hours, I had this. Bruh. Yeah, maybe Mixamo is the way to go. Now it was time to work on the enemy AI, which to start off, I needed to be able to walk around the map and follow the player. For this, I could just use the old script from the chocolate monster, but this had some problems. With this old script, the enemy always knew where the player was and could see the player through walls. To fix this, I completely remade the script and added a raycast pointing towards the player. If this raycast goes through a wall, the monster will start patrolling to different points on the map. If there are no walls between the monster and the player, it will just start chasing the player instead. Now it was time to make some custom enemy attacks, so I hesitantly opened up Blender again, and this time it didn't go horribly. I managed to make a summoning animation that I added into Unity. I then made it so if the enemy gets too close to the player, it will switch animations and start summoning. Then when the animation is finished, it will continue chasing the player. I also made it so that the ice cream rotates towards the player while summoning, which made it look a lot creepier. Currently, our ice cream man doesn't summon anything and he just floats there like a weirdo. So to fix this, I made a script for randomly spawning cubes and it worked first try. Okay, second try. Okay, it took some time, but I finally got it to spawn between 3 and 5 cubes at a time. I then replaced the cube with the old running animation that I threw in the trash earlier and edited it some more so it wouldn't suck as much. I also named these little guys Tiny Creams, but if you have any better name suggestions, then leave them in the comments. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this kind of content. Anyways, enough self-promoting, it's time to work on more AI. The ice creams and summoning animation wasn't very scary or cool to watch, so I knew I needed some particles. I got this snow texture from the internet and made a nice particle effect that starts when the enemy starts summoning. Then I also gave the tiny cream some running particles as well. I made it so that the tiny cream would be able to chase and attack the player. I set their target to the player's position, and when they get close enough, I set them as a child of the camera so they will stick to your face for a little while. When the ice cream jumps on you, they will slow you down for a couple of seconds and you won't be able to sprint. This will allow the big ice cream to catch up and capture you. Don't worry, I will soon add a really insane weapon that will allow you to absolutely destroy these ice creams. But then there was another problem I had to fix. When the player got close enough to the enemy, it just instantly started summoning, which was really confusing and the player had no way to react. Therefore, I added this light to the monster that switches on when the player gets close enough. It will slowly fade into blue, and after 2 seconds, the summoning animation will start. Then, to make the factory look scary, I added some post-processing, which really gave life to the entire place. Now it was time to work on the weapon, so I opened up Blender and created the best weapon ever for fighting tiny creams. A flamethrower, of course. I created a flame particle and attached it to the weapon. Then I also made the player able to pick up the weapon and turn it on. The flamethrower was missing some pizzazz, so I made another flame particle and attached it to whatever the player was looking at while using the flamethrower, and this was just awesome. Now when you aim the flamethrower towards the tiny creams, they will begin melting, and after a couple of seconds they will die. And if you aim at anything else, you will burn down the entire building, so be careful. Currently, you could just hold down left click all game and burn anything, so to nerf this, I added a slider that shows the amount of fuel the flamethrower has. If it reaches 0, it will stop working, but you can use the fuel tank to refill the weapon again. I then placed a couple of fuel tanks all around the map, so unless you're really bad, you'll probably never run out of fuel. If you manage to kill Tiny Cream, it has a 1 in 4 chance of dropping some ice cream. These drops are very valuable because the big ice cream is attracted to them and wants to collect them to become stronger. Therefore, I made it so that if the player picks up the drops and places them on the ground, the monster will instantly run towards it and ignore the player and everything else in its path. Right now, there wasn't any actual ending in the game, so I made a simple jump scare animation and made it play if the player gets caught by the big ice cream. For the player to win the game, they would need to trap the ice cream in the freezing room. Therefore, I added another cube and tried making it so the player could drag it across the floor. I did this similarly to how I made a jump scare animation for the tiny creams, where I made the item a child to the camera, but this time I added a check if the cube was grounded, so you wouldn't be able to lift it up in the air. It took a couple of attempts, but in the end I managed to make it so if the player gets close enough to the drag item and holds down E and S button at the same time, they will slowly walk backwards, dragging the cube across the floor. I also made it so the enemy couldn't see or walk through the cube. Before I finished the ending of the game, I decided to actually decorate the level and make it more interesting. I added a freezer room, a storage room, and a bunch of other rooms you would find in a factory. Then I also scattered fuel boxes all around and hid the flamethrower in a locker. Anyways, back to making the actual ending. If you use the ice cream drops on the floor, you can lower the big ice cream into the freezer room. When the monster is in the freezing room, you can drag the cube to block the door, which will trap him inside, and this will trigger the windscreen. To make the ending more satisfying, I added a simple camera shake and an impact noise, as if the enemy was mad that it couldn't get out and was trying to destroy the door. 2 seconds after you trap the monster, a screen will appear saying that you won. To make the player know what to actually do in the game, I added a couple of notes made by the employee of the week, Billy, all around the map, just like chapter 1 of my game. Currently, the player was able to open and close doors, but the enemy was a real rule breaker and decided to just phase through them instead. I wasn't having this, so I added a collider that detects if the monster is close enough to the door and then opens it. The monster kept feeling more rebellious and decided it didn't want to walk anymore, so I had to remove the collisions of some of the boxes, and somehow that fixed the problem. Now the game was almost finished, so I fixed the UI a bit and improved the main menu. If you want to try out this game, there will be itch.io link in the description, and if you want to see me make chapter 1 of this video, then click this video right here. Until next time, bye.